So we're going to think for a little bit about the cultural triangle and worship. And so if you haven't seen the cultural triangle video yet, I would recommend that you take a look at that. So the question that we've had as a church is, what's the significance of recognizing that in this cultural triangle, we aren't all the same? And how does that play into our experience in worship? And so just to review from the other video, we have among us people who are more expressive people. And we have people among us who are more analytical people. And we have among us people who are more reflective people. And we recognize that nobody is all any one of these things, that we tend to engage in different ways at different times. We're a mixture of things. But what we did is we got together and said, when we gather together as a church for worship, what helps you in worship? And so I invite you to think about this as I go through this in ways that both these things express things that are helpful to you and maybe new ideas that you can bring to the table. When we talked to the expressive people, they said in worship, a key thing is, and it makes sense, they need to express. Perhaps they need to speak. Perhaps they need to move. And they need to be able to engage emotionally. That these are important things to them in a worship service. So they've got to be able to put themselves into it in a way that they can speak, they can move, they can emote, that they can be engaged in that way. When we ask the analytical people, what is helpful to you in a worship service, well, one of the things they said is, don't force expression. So, in other words, when there are expressive people among us, it's okay that they be expressive, but don't make me as an analytical person express. Let me engage in the way that's useful for me. What was important for the analytical people is that they want to know what's the plan. They want to know the reasoning, so the rationale. They'd like to understand things. So that's a key thing, is that the analytical people are very concerned in being able to understand what's going on and why. And so if there is the expression of emotion or as people engage, that's okay. But they want to be able to understand in that being a helpful thing for them in worship. When we ask the reflective people, that clearly they want support for reflection. And so a key part of that is that there need to be times when there are fewer words. In fact, there might be times when we just have silence. There needs to be time to process so that there's a little bit more space. And it's important that don't force interaction. That for others it might be okay to engage in those kinds of interactions, but it'd be challenging for them. That would not be helpful. And so we look at this, and in one way we say, well, we've got some people who really want to express, some people who want to be able to analyze and think and understand, and some people would like space to reflect. And it can seem like it's very challenging to make this work. And yet a concept that somebody shared with us a long time ago that's really been helpful to us, and that is this idea of healthy discomfort. So there's a kind of healthy discomfort that we need when we come together. And so the idea of that is that if I'm an expressive person, the reality is the service is not going to be designed entirely around me being able to express. There will be some discomfort when there are things that are more suited for an analytical person, a reflective person. Similarly, if we come as analytical people, there will be some discomfort when there's more expression of emotion than we're comfortable with, or maybe times when we're just waiting and it's silent. Likewise, for reflective people, there might be a way in which there are times that there's going to be more expression than they're comfortable with. And yet, so part of the service is going to be, our hope is going to be especially helpful for each of these groups, and parts will be different. And so a key thing about the healthy discomfort is that there are times in the service that I'm going to be asked to show hospitality for others. That is, I want to create a space where those who are more expressive can feel at home. They can feel like this is a place that they can be themselves. And so if I'm a reflective person, I want to create that space. And so we want to show hospitality for each other. And one of the things that we find does happen is that we might discover ways to branch out. And so we might discover that if we are analytical people, that, well, we actually really think there are times that expressing emotion is really valuable to us. And for expressive people might discover that there are times when, that there's time to process, and that turns out to be really helpful for us. And as a reflective person, it might be very helpful to find that there are times that, expressing is something that I can do, and I find it valuable. And so our hope is that we're enriched by each other in this experience, and we're willing to serve each other through the healthy discomfort that leads then to an experience of worship that is more welcoming, it's more inclusive, and we all both experience the hospitality of others caring for us, and we then also can care for others.